It's very easy to play it safe and not get out of our comfort zones. When we're aligned with something that's bigger than ourselves, when we see a bigger mission or we see an opportunity to help, a lot of times that is that push that that helps us to get out of the shadows, to put ourselves forward, say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this even though it's going to be uncomfortable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Loki Genius Podcast, where we talk about the stories behind every podcast. I'm your host, Jovel Delima, and today in the show, I have my guest, Sharissa Sebastian Deppen, the CEO of Leadership Mastery Alliance, a company specializing in supporting introverted servant leaders who are women in corporate leadership. Sharissa is a leadership and executive coach with over 15 years of corporate leadership experience, in addition to coaching several Fortune 100 leaders and executives. So, wow, that was amazing. So, Sharissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Javal. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so before we start, can you please introduce yourself and give us a little bit a background about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, my focus now is on helping or supporting introverted servant leaders who are specifically women who are in the corporate space and have responsibility over teams and things like that, and just trying to navigate that space and do the very best that they can to have the impact and influence that they want to have. So, my
Mm-hmm.
journey very much was started in that space of corporate leadership before I transitioned into my business full time. But even before that, I started off as a software engineer. So I very much
Oh,
identify being an introverted servant leader.
ah,
And so in
yes.
my early career journey and all the way up until, towards the end of my corporate journey, there were just a lot of things that weren't really working so well for me. I didn't know myself well enough to know how to function in what I call your leadership zone of genius. Like I didn't understand what my strengths were. I was constantly comparing myself to other people, feeling like there was something wrong with me because I didn't show up in a certain way. I wasn't as extroverted. I wasn't really outspoken. I was constantly being told, you need to be more visible, you need to have more executive presence, we want to hear more from you, all of those kinds of messages. And I really struggled a lot with trying to find my space and trying to find a way that I could still excel in that space, still have impact and influence and be that strong leader that I knew I could be. But I didn't know how to do that because I was very much introverted, and also just
Yes.
that I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I wanted the focus to be on everyone else but myself. And so there were certain struggles that I went through, and it wasn't until I went through coaching that I really understood me and how I was wired and how God designed me to be. And I was able to then identify with that, really step into my confidence and strength, and align that with a work that I feel is very impactful and meaningful. And so that's how I made that transition into coaching full time. Now I just am, so humbled, and I'm just so grateful that I get to coach other people who maybe have gone through similar struggles than I have. But also in my 10 plus years of doing this full time, this is actually my 11th year of my business and going into coaching full time. I've learned so much along the way, and I've learned from my clients. I've learned from my own studies and research on introverts and how we show up and how we can really align and really be energized by the work that we're doing. Because as introverts, one of the things, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, is that it's very easy to get drained of our energy, and we need to be very careful about where we put our time and focus. So aligning with meaningful, impactful work is also really important. But yeah, that's been my journey, and that's why I do what I do today.
Yeah, that was an inspiring journey. And you know what? You are creating a big impact right now to a lot of people because, as I know, me also, I am struggling with being I am a little bit of introvert myself, but I push myself to to do the things that I want to do because a lot of things stop me. Most of the time is myself. I have self doubt. I have a belief issue in myself that if I can do it, and having someone like you in the field, you are creating and you are helping a lot of people get out of their comfort zone, and maybe they achieve great things in life because of knowing someone like you. And I was inspired by you because the moment you accepted my connection, and I stalked you on YouTube, and you said that you speak in TEDx. That was inspiring.
Thank you.
So, let's talk about your podcasting journey. What inspired you to start a podcast, and how does it complement your work in leadership coaching, in mentoring women in corporate leadership?
Oh, that's a great question and a very good question for an introvert, right? Yourself included, as far as like, why
Yes.
do we do this, right? Why do we put ourselves out there and do these podcasts or speak or whatever the case may be? And it kind of goes back to what I was saying. And I love that you call this out because a lot of times introverts can lean back and, just not want, because we don't really enjoy the spotlight or it's not something we crave. It's very easy to play it safe and not get out of our comfort zones. But when we're
Yes.
aligned, for me this has been so true and I've seen this repeatedly with my clients as well. When we're aligned with something that's bigger than ourselves, when we see a bigger mission or we see an opportunity to help, and that's where that servant leadership comes in, because introverts tend to be really, like really in tune with what other people need or how they can serve, and they want to serve, they want to help others, they want to build those connections and relationships. And so when we see a need to do, to do that, and we feel like, okay, we can help in some way, a lot of times that is that push that that helps us to get out of the shadows, to put
Yes.
ourselves forward, say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this, even though it's going to be uncomfortable. And oftentimes, what introverts will find is that when they align with something that is meaningful to them, that is impactful to them, and they're like, you know what, this mission matters to me, or what I'm doing matters, and I know I can make a difference. When you step
Mm.
out of your zone from that place, number one, you have a lot more confidence. But number two, it's where you really
Yes.
shine because you're aligning yourself
Yes.
with something that matters to you, and that passion and that inner, like that energy comes through in that way. So I think that is so important when you're starting up, whether that's a podcast journey, whether you decide to take the stage and speak, whether you decide to write, whatever you decide to do, however you decide to make a difference in the world, whether that's in a workplace or business, whatever it is, it's aligning with something that you feel strongly about and recognizing that even if you only help one person through being on that podcast or through taking that stage or speaking to
Yes.
somebody, if that's all you're doing is focusing on the one person that you can make a difference, in their lives, that's enough. You don't have to be overwhelmed by like this grand scale and trying to have these, there's nothing wrong with having big goals. But I think from a servant
Yes.
leader perspective, it helps to really focus on, okay, if what I'm doing, if I can take a step out of my comfort zone and focus on one person, then that's what I'm going to do. And that was really the start of my podcast journey because I knew there was something important about the work that I was doing behind the scenes with my clients one on one and in groups and all of that. And I was like, there's something here. There's a need for, for this type of work. And so if I can get that to a bigger audience, and honestly, my journey is so much a faith journey. So I'm a Christian. And so I feel like
Yes.
God led me to this place based on my own struggle, right? From a place where I was struggling so much. Now he's brought me to the side to say, you know what, now you can reach out your hand and help other people because you've now, come through a big part of that journey. I still struggle with a lot of things, of course. But at the same time, there's so much that I learned that I can now help other people. And so I keep asking the question, okay, God, how do you want to use me? What else? How do you want me to get that message out there? Because I can start to see that he's showing me that what he has, is helping me to do is helping people. So I'm like, okay, how do I get that out to more people so I can help more people? That's how the TED Talk came about. Because I never dreamt that I would do a TED Talk, never wanted to do anything like that in my life. But I kept
Yes.
asking the question, okay, God, how do I get this out in front of this is helpful and people are telling me it's helpful. How do I get this in front of a bigger audience? And so the TED Talk is the pursuit of happiness in the workplace. Because I felt like that was something that I've learned along the way, like the importance of joy in whatever you do, right? Whether it's at work or even in your personal life. And so I just kept asking the question, and the podcast was another way that I could get that message out there. So I would say for whoever
Yes.
who is on the fence, trying to figure out, do I do this? Do I not do this? Ask yourself, does this align with something that I am truly passionate about? And if so, if you
Yes.
can stick with it, because it's not an easy journey, right? There's a lot of things you have to figure out. There's a lot of focus on different stuff like building your audience, finding the right audience, what is your message. There's a lot of things that go into that,
Yes.
but don't be intimidated by that. If you are driven by a strong passion and if you feel like God has placed this on your heart and there's a message that you have to give, you're going to be able to do that despite all the challenges and obstacles. So that's what I would say. Just connect with something that you feel strongly about. And if you feel like there's an opportunity there and there's an audience that's, that is waiting to hear from you, right? That needs to hear from you, go for it and just make sure that you are so aligned that no matter what the challenges come up, you're going to be able to move forward and find the right support for sure. 100% find support. You can't do this on your own, nor are you meant to do it on your own. So find the support you need
Yes.
to be able to do it.
So I am relating to what you're saying, and I am reminiscing what I'm doing from the past years because you know what, I am also an introverted person, and I am a Christian, and everything I do is in alignment with doing good to other people. And if you have something good in you and you want to share also it to other people, podcasting is the best way and the good way to share your voice to other people. What you want to share to inspire also. I am I am a social media manager here in the Philippines, and here it's very hard to have, um, find the goal and the path that you want to go. But have I started this podcast to inspire people. I started this podcast to inspire that, um what if someone watched the video I created and they inspired by the guest that I have, and that episode changed that person's lives because of what he or she hears from my guest. So having the passion and having the grit, because doing podcast is not easy, and connecting to people is not easy, making people to believe that, um, what your goal is not easy. But if you have, driven, if you have a purpose in what you are doing, and everything that you do is God centered, everything will happen. You will never know
Yeah.
what's next. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, it's one
Yes.
step at a time, one day at a time. And that's where faith comes in, right? You have to trust and not put so much focus on the future that you miss out on the blessing of today. Yeah.
Yes. And also, many people assume leadership requires extroversion. Is it correct? So, how does your podcast challenge that idea, and what unique insights do you share to empower introverted servant leaders?
Oh, this is a great question. So I think to start off with, I think it would be helpful for whoever's listening for me to define what that means, like what introversion is, what extroversion is, so they can try to figure out,
Yes.
okay, where do I fit, or maybe it's in the middle. And so when it comes to introversion and extroversion, there's a lot of different definitions of what that is. But one of my favorites, and the one I use and I gravitate towards, is that introverts get their energy from being by themselves. So from
Yes.
withdrawing from social space and all of that, and just being by themselves, recharging. And they're not. And another myth that I want to debunk, really quickly, talking about that, is that introverts are not antisocial. They're not awkward in social situations. None of those things. It's just that they need that space, and to be able to recharge before they engage. They like being around people, right? So they prefer a lot of times to build those relationships, to get to know other people well, not necessarily to be in a big crowded space all the time, but they really value those relationships and those authentic connections. But they do need to recharge by being away from other people. Extroverts, on the other hand, like to, or they get the energy from being around other people, right? So they enjoy
Yes.
that, they get energized by it. They are often, they like to talk out loud, so they process externally, so meaning they speak out loud as they're thinking through things, right? So they're just going to start
Yes.
speaking, having conversations, connecting with other people. They really get energized by that. And it's interesting because my husband happens to be very much an extrovert. So it's very interesting for me because I'm always observing, these differences and all of that. But it's not to say, and the other reason I bring that up is because he also will tell me, he's like, yeah, I'm an extrovert, but I also need my time, by myself. And I always
Yeah.
say, there's no exclusive thing, right? It's not like, oh, just because it doesn't make him any less of an extrovert. It's just our natural tendency is what we're talking about here. It doesn't mean you're 100% like that as an introvert or 100% like that as an extrovert, right? There's a balance in between. But generally speaking, that's an introvert, right? You get your energy from being by yourself, and then extroverts is the opposite. But kind of going back to your question about, like, we live in a world, generally speaking, right, in the corporate space, and it's starting to shift a little bit now as people become more aware of what this means, right? The different personality types. What does an introvert mean? How do they identify whether they're an introvert, whether they're working with
Yes.
introverts, all of those things. But yeah, typically speaking, and this is how it shows up, right? So people don't necessarily use the word, oh, you're an introvert, so you need to do this, or you're an extrovert. But the way it shows up is, a lot of my clients will come to me and say, and my introverted clients, they're being told that they should have more executive presence, that they need to really have that presence in a meeting, for example. They would like, people would like them to speak up more, right? To interject, to speak up in the meeting, to be good with, like, speaking on the spot. The other thing is visibility. I get this one a lot as well. They've been told, okay, you need to be more visible. You need to get yourself out there. You need to make sure that people know who you are, what you're doing, all of those things. And none of those things are bad necessarily, but we've been trained in a corporate space for the most part. Again, I'm using a generalization. It's not always the case. But generally speaking, in the corporate space, we've been trained to see extroverts and then see that as, oh, that's visible, that's having executive presence, that's speaking up in meetings, when it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. There's other ways of going
Yes.
about it as an introvert where you can still get that same outcome, but you can play to your strengths. And in my coaching practice, I call this your leadership zone of genius. So that leadership zone of genius means understanding how God made you, understanding your strengths, your experiences, the things that you love. What are you passionate about? What are the things that you tend to gravitate towards? What gives you energy versus taking away energy? All of those things. What's your belief system, right? What are you grounded in? All of those things make up who you are uniquely and what the gift that you are there to give to the world. And so once you understand that, and you understand that there's certain things and certain ways that you are made and wired, it's so much easier to have confidence in that, to go, oh, it's not that something's wrong with me. That's just how God has made me. And so now the next
Yes.
step is, okay, now how do I show up in the corporate space and still be able to achieve what I want to achieve, have the influence, have impact, get a promotion so I can have more impact and influence on people, different things like that, while still playing to my strengths. And there's absolutely ways to do that. And I talk a lot about this, both on my podcast and then also when I speak and with my clients as well, teaching them how to really understand how they're wired and understand that as an introvert, you can still function really well without you having to compare yourself and try to be somebody that you're not. So the relationship building, there's a lot of keys to that, but one of them is relationship building and just leaning into those strengths to get the opportunity to, have that impact that they want to have.
My takeaway on that, figuring out what God's made me. This is what God's made me. I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to make this happen. What I wanted to do. That impact me because at school, I'm not really good at school because I'm very that child person. But I'm really wanted to show what I want, what I know. I want to share until I figure things out that if I want to express myself, I have to do this. I have to go out and tell everyone that I can do it. And this episode is really kind of I remembering a lot of things as I experience all the things that you have said. You mentioned and also I saw that you work with Fortune 100s.
Yes, so leaders at those companies.
What's one major leadership lesson you've learned that you frequently share on your podcast?
And I think it goes back to probably the one thing that stands out to me the most is that leadership zone of genius. So it's actually a combination, right? So if you think about the things that are really important to really being successful in the workplace, number one, it's that leadership zone of genius. And part of that is your belief system. Like for me, servant leadership is very, very important to me. That's part of who I am. That's part of how I want to lead. Not always perfect, doesn't always look perfect, but it's part of what I aspire to be. So all of that forms your leadership zone of genius. So knowing all of those different pieces of what makes you unique, the value that you're here to bring to the world, it makes it so much easier for you to communicate that with other people. So I would say that knowing your leadership zone of genius is number one. And then number two is knowing who you're going to impact, right? So knowing your audience, whether that's in a work environment, whether like if you're a podcaster, knowing your audience. So when you know them, when you know their deep like desires, what are the things that challenge them? What are the things that keep them up at night? And how can you then connect the dots between the value that you're there to provide and the things that they really need help or they struggle with or they aspire to, right? So it can be on both sides, either something that challenges them and they're struggling with and they need help overcoming it, or it can be something that they really want, right? They aspire to do great things, so they want to achieve whatever it is. If you can come in and say, okay, here's the value based on my understanding of who you are and what you need, here is the value that I can add, here's how I can help you. I think that really helps. And then so that number two is just knowing your audience, knowing who you're engaging with. And then number three is that meaningful, energizing work. So especially as introverts, you want to make sure that the work that you're doing and where you put your time, your focus, your energy, your effort is aligned with God's purpose for you, right? Because when it's not, then you don't have that fuel. You don't have the strength that you need to be able to do the work that He's calling you to do. So just making sure that you identify what that is. And if you need help, please go and get the support that you need, whether that is maybe through find a coach or a mentor or somebody who is trained and who knows how to ask you the right questions. To be able to uncover what that purpose is, or at least for this season, right? Because that could change over time as well. So you don't have to be locked into like one specific purpose or thing. But for right now, get aligned with something that you're passionate about, that you care deeply about, that God has placed in your heart and said, okay, here's the place that this is the need that you can fulfill, and all of that. So when you align your leadership zone of genius with knowing your audience, with that purpose and meaningful work, that's when everything can just come alive and you can be so much more confident because you really are in that flow state. We're kind of working in a way that aligns with all of those different things and you feel so good. It's so fulfilling. There's a peace that comes with that. There's an energy that's behind that. There's just so many things that come with that as well that helps you along the way.
Yeah, so in addition to that, if someone's struggling, why is it very important to find a coach that you can ask for help?
That's a good question. And I can speak from my own journey as well. And I still have, coaches supporting me and different things like that. And so having your community is incredibly important. And when I say community, that's a
Yes.
broad term. It can mean a lot of things. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be mentors, it could be people at work, right? Your colleagues, your leadership at work. It can be, a community outside of work. For me, my church community is extremely pivotal to everything that I do. They help me, they support me, and then I can then help and support them as well. So finding somebody that is, and then identify the areas where you need the most help. So for example, to go back to what you were saying about if you're struggling with trying to find your place, what is it that you're supposed to be doing, whether that's at work or whatever it is, a coach is a really good resource for you, because I can even speak from my own experience. When I found a coach, and I worked with several coaches throughout my career, they helped ask me the right questions to really uncover things that I wasn't even aware of, options I was not even aware of. So when I was at the end of my corporate career, I knew nothing about coaching, didn't know about the profession, didn't know it existed, didn't know it was even an option for me. But through finding a coach and then, unpacking all of that with them, I really started to understand what this was. And I was like, oh my goodness, there are people out in this world that are specifically trained to help others, along their journey. So that's why I think coaching has been so impactful for me personally. And I've seen it impact so many other people, not just through my own work that I do personally, and in our business, but also in, through other coaches and the work that they're doing. And it really does, it can change your life. I mean, coaching 100% changed my life. God used that as, to help me at a time where I needed help the most. And you won't know exactly what that's like unless you take that step and, and at least start that relationship, and just take a chance on it, just go and try to find somebody that can help. And finding the right fit is going to be important too. Not every coach is the same. So you want to make sure that you find the right person, that's really going
Yes.
to be able to uncover and unpack that and help you just reach your full potential without burning out, but, in a way that really makes you feel good about what you're doing in the world.
Yes, having a coach is like having a roadmap to where you want to be, because coaches will guide you what you want to do, what you need to understand, what you need to improve in yourself for you to get there. And having a coach is like someone having a friend who will gonna help you. And my additional question to that is, why having a partner that will support you in your goal is very important.
So I think, as far as a partner, and it's more than just a partner. So if you think about like a coaching relationship, that is a professional relationship, right? That you have with a coach, somebody who's trained specifically to help you in whatever area it is that you're seeking help. So I think finding the right person and partnering with the right person that's going to help you is so important. I mean, we all have, I'm sure,
Yes.
we can think about friends that we had in our lives who maybe had good intentions and we're trying to help and support us, but maybe they may not have been the right person to help us to get to where we needed to go. So that's why it's so important to find the right support that you need, people that are trained, but also that have a proven track record of helping other people in that same area. You want to make sure that you're aligning with the right help and resources, and also look at their track record, right? Look at what other people are saying and see, okay, are they really able to help me? Based on what I'm experiencing, and don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Ask them
Yeah.
specifically questions about, like, do they feel like they can help you, and how can they, help you achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. So I think that partnership in that way, is really critical.
Yes, yes, that is 100% correct. So, to wrap things up, this is my last question for you. Since we are in a podcast, what advice would you give to someone who wants to use podcasting as a tool to build their brand and authority in their industry, especially if they're introverted or hesitant to put themselves out there?
Oh, I would say patience. Patience, because it's not like we were talking about before, right? There's a lot of steps that go into podcasting. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Honestly, when I got it, before I even decided to start a podcast, I thought in my mind, I made it to be this big thing, right? And it was overwhelming in my mind before I actually
Yes.
started to look at the steps. So when you again, it's working with the right people and understanding, okay, here's step by step, right? Looking at people that have already started a podcast and looking to see, okay, what are the steps that I need to take to get there? So just be patient with yourself, be patient with the process, but first of all, make sure you're aligning with something that you feel passionate about. Otherwise, it's very easy to get demotivated, right? You get one stumbling block and you're
Yes.
like, oh, it's not worth it. Okay, I'm not doing it anymore. So make sure that you feel so strongly about the reason behind the why that's driving you to do that podcast, that no matter what obstacle you face, you're going to be, you're reaching out for support, you're getting the help that you need so that you keep moving forward, rather than being discouraged and just saying, okay, forget it, I'm not doing this. So that accountability, coaching is another good example of this. You can be a coach, a friend, accountability partner, whoever it is, but have somebody to walk beside you and hold you accountable to that, to ask you the questions, to say, okay, why are you really passionate about this? Why will you stick to this and try to get your podcast out there no matter what, right? No matter what obstacles come your way. And so when somebody is walking alongside you and holding you accountable and saying, okay, let's check in this week. What did you do? How far along are you with your podcast? How is your podcast doing? When you have that right person to help and support you, it can make all the difference. So I would say definitely just be patient with yourself, be patient with the process, make sure it's aligned with something that's important to you, and get the support that you need.
Yes, finding the why is very important because that fuels you to keep moving forward. So that was great. So if people want to know more about you, where they can find you, where they can go to look for Sharissa.
Thanks for asking, Jovel. So if you have any questions based on our discussion today, feel free to email me directly at info, at leadershipmasteryalliance.com. And you can find more about me and the company and the work that we do at leadershipmasteryalliance.com. Actually, right now, we're taking in just a couple more people, two more people for this year, for one-on-one coaching to help them discover what that leadership zone of genius is, to help them be
Ye-
excited about the work they're doing, to have incredible impact and influence way faster than they thought possible. So if this is something that's interesting to your audience, then go to leadershipmasteryalliance.com/LMA, and that'll tell you more about the program and what working with us is like and the results. You can go to our testimonials page to hear directly from our clients as well. Thank you
Yeah.
again.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you have a great day and God bless you all.